Hello, all you patrons. Welcome to another pre-show. Gather around, take a seat, and have some of that sweet summer wine.
That's right. Nancy Sinatra's finest. Aged just like Nancy herself.
Eight-
But full disclosure, I tortured our relentless reminding him of the lyrics of Summer Wine, and then we both made the mistake of looking up Nancy Sinatra to see what she looks like now. I tell you what, that Summer Wine has been pretty aged.
Pretty aged.
There's a reason you don't take Annie Greensprings or Boone's Farm and put it away for 50 years. Cheap wine doesn't age well.
Yeah.
Mise en bouteille at the chateau. Chateau Spring Street. I'm laughing and I'm crying. I mean, Nancy Sinatra was hot stuff when I was a kid. You know?
Yeah, it's I
I
I don't
don't know
even know
what
what
to
to
say.
say. It's such a profound before and after. It's wow.
You know, it uh there's a oh, how does that go? There's an old poem, 16th century, 17th century, a Cavalier poem. Um, this is the line that came to my mind. That with looking at Nancy, poor girl. Your most beautiful bit that hath this was in the 18th century. Your most beautiful bit that hath all eyes upon her, that her honesty falls for a logo of honor, whose lightness and brightness do shine in such splendor, that none but the stars are thought fit to attend her. Though now she be pleasant and sweet to the sense, will be damnably mouldy 100 years hence.
Mmm.
Your chancery lawyer, who subtly thrives in spinning our suits to the length of 3 lives, such suits which the clients do wear out in slavery, whilst pleader makes conscience a cloak for his knavery, may boast of futility in the present tense, but non est inventus 100 years hence. And I think that's very true. And poor Nancy reminds us that beauty vanishes quickly. It's funny, you will take. It was like I told her the story. I don't think I named names. At least I hope I didn't. But at a party some years ago, an acquaintance of my brother and myself, who was actually a supermodel back in the '60s, but at the time of our story, about 15 years ago, was such no longer. She wasn't quite as far gone as Nancy, but you know. Anyway, she was quite in the bag at this party, and she comes up to my brother Andre and says, "Andre, I want your unconditional acceptance." Did I tell you the story?
Yes, I love it.
Did I tell it on the air?
I don't know. I don't think so actually.
All right. So she comes up and says, "Andre, I want your unconditional acceptance." And Andre just stares and she walks off. A few minutes later, "Andre, I want your unconditional acceptance." And she keeps doing this through the course of the evening, like 5 or 6 times. And she, of course, she's getting increasingly drunker, and she wasn't sober to start with. So my brother says to me finally, "What in God's name does she want out of me?" And I looked at him and said, "Your unconditional acceptance. Haven't you been listening?" So he rolls his eyes, looks up at the heavens. She comes up again. "Andre, I want your unconditional acceptance." He says, "All right, you have my unconditional acceptance." And she says, "Oh, okay, thanks," and walks off. And that was the end of that. She got what she wanted. You know, end of story.
I feel like we all want that, but she just voiced it directly.
And got it as a result.
Yeah.
See? Now, Nancy Sinatra says there's a bad place in her heart. Was that it?
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, right now, I want everyone And believe me, as a person in the 60s, I want everyone who's listening, who's watching, okay, I want us all to join our life forces together for Nancy Sinatra, to renew that place in her heart, to make it bloom again, to take this withered garden and fill it with flowers and joy and rainbows and unicorns and stuff. Let's all focus on that right now. All right, you ready?
Ready.
Nancy, 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 we all love you and fill your heart. There. Does everybody feel better?
You were very adept at doing that, and I feel like that was based off real life experience.
I've lived in Hollywood most of my life. You know the two-bit displays of psychic support? You think that's tough? Ha! It's easy. I mean, listen, the town where I was raised is the place where people will nap in solidarity with the starving in the third world. A napathon. Really? So you're taking a nap for the starving. That's right, man. This is where it starts. The napathon.
Truth be told,
Yeah.
I very rarely in Hollywood and Beverly Hills area, and I was right along the edge, and um,
Most people there are right along the edge.
all wow, the commercial area, all I was seeing, it was very limited in what it had. It had it had weed shops, it had yoga studios, it had what
What
was
more
it?
do you want?
Tarot readers, like
See?
psychics, and then it
Yeah.
had Jewish temples.
So you got everything you need. Look, it's very simple.
There's so many of each of those.
You toke up, right? You go into the tarot shop to find out what your future is going to be. You go to the yogi to get your equilibrium with the universe, and then for a little bit of more rigorous spirituality, you hit the temple, and you're good to hook.
More rigorous spirituality.
Yeah, something Jewish, something old, something new, something Jewish, something blue. Isn't that how it goes?
Something like that.
Anyway, I think that's a wonderful thing. So now you see, you understand the formula for success in Los Angeles. See, the problem is you lived all your life in the burbs. And as anyone will tell you, the only people who live in the burbs are those with real lives.
Okay.
And as we say in my family, reality is only a crutch for those who can't handle fantasy.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, the weed, the tarot cards, the yoga, and yes, dare I say it, I mean, even some of those temples that you would have gone to, they'd either be wildly reformed or they'd be into some sort of, Madonna-esque Kabbalah deal.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you'd find some sort of new agey temples of light here and there.
Probably. And Google Maps, I've seen a lot of weird Hindu stuff.
Yeah, and maybe you should consider taking a course in miracles. Or if you want to go into the
stop. Hold up. Back
what?
it up. What are you referring to? Where can I take this course in miracles? Tell me about this.
Well, it's funny you should ask. Isn't it funny? We're going from 18th century off-color drinking songs to A Course in Miracles. Well, why not? This is off the menu, and we are free to range the entire universe, seeking both for wisdom and things to laugh at, which is a fair combination, I think. A Course in Miracles. Oh, the Foundation for Inner Peace. I like that. Love that name. They're the publisher for, all right, publisher of A Course in Miracles. But you know what? I'm not going to go to their website because I'm not keen on their cookies. So I will. Oh no, I've blundered into there. That's not what I wanted. Here we go. Wikipedia, A Course in Miracles, also referred to as ACIM or The Course, is a 1976 book by Helen Schucman. See? Schucman. What did I tell you? The underlying premise is that the greatest quote unquote miracle is the act of simply gaining a full awareness of love's presence in a person's life. Schucman said that the book had been dictated to her word for word via a process of inner dictation from Jesus Christ. The yeah, it's borrowed all right. Oh man, it is crazy, crazy stuff. Marianne Williamson, the 92, discussed it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. But let's go see who Helen Schucman was. Helen Cohn Schucman, Dora Cohn, July 14th, 1909 to February 9th, psychologist and research psychologist. So, you know, she was good as a religious prophet. She was a professor of medical psychology at Columbia University in New York from 1958 to retirement in 1976. Schucman is best known for having scribed, with the help of colleague William Thetford, the book A Course in Miracles, first edition 75, the contents of which she claimed had been given to her by her inner voice she identified as Jesus. However, at her request, her role as its writer was not revealed to the general public until her death. Her parents were both half Jewish, they were non-observant. Schucman's mother dabbled in theosophy and various expressions of Christianity, such as Christian Science and the Unity School of Christianity. So she's kind of a bridge figure between what was called New Thought and the New Age. That's interesting. Anyway, there was a time, oh golly, 30 years ago now, when I was hearing about this stuff constantly. People were going on and on and on and on about how wonderful Course in Miracles was. Then I stopped hearing about it, and that's okay. I don't mind not hearing about it.
That's good.
I actually, it's like the Urantia book or the Aetherius Society or any of these sorts of things. If you don't want to tell me about your devotion to them in great detail, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say that you become a devotee of the teachings of, well, I don't know who'd be a good example, Thomas Troward. And you've read every Thomas Troward book you can get your hands on. This is a New Age teacher, he's a judge in India under the British. You read this stuff and you wanted to tell me all about it. And then suddenly to say, you know, I don't think I'll tell him. If that should happen to you, ladies and gentlemen, don't feel bad. It's okay. I affirm what you've just done in not telling me this stuff. If you want to say to me that you were going to tell me you were going to say that you were getting visions, you're having this happen, that happen, did you feel like you're sort of one with the cosmos, that you're in touch with every molecule in existence? If you don't want to tell me, that's okay. I mean, if you do tell me, that's fine too. I'm not going to get upset or anything. But if you decide that you're actually a vehicle for a 25 million year old entity, a former warrior queen in Atlantis, and that you really feel that you need to reveal this, and I'm probably the first person you need to reveal it to, I'll hear you out. But if before we speak about it, you suddenly decide that I'm not the right vessel for this understanding, okay. Because I've heard it all.
25 million year old entity, a warrior queen from Atlantis?
Yeah. A warrior priestess queen, probably.
Okay, I can't help it. I have to ask, how close is this? how close is this to what you've encountered?
Except the entity in question was male and not, in fact, a warrior priestess queen. Pretty darn close. I have to admit, I did take it a step further. but not much further.
Okay.
Well, it's called channeling. It used to, it was big 40 years ago. Ramtha.
Ramtha?
Ramtha.
Is that an abbreviation for something? It
No,
sounds
it's a
like it.
name.
Ramtha? What? A name for what? A program or something?
Go ahead, read it aloud.
I don't want to.
I don't want it. It's a hate fact.
Ramtha School of Enlightenment is an American New Age spiritual sect near the rural town of Yelm, Washington. The school was established in 1988 by J.Z. Knight, who claims to channel a 35,000-year-old being called Ramtha the Enlightened One. The school's teachings are based on channeling sessions. Critics consider the organization to be a cult.
Oh, do they really? Wonder how they got that idea.
So Jay-Z is actually Judy Zebra Knight. Okay,
Is she still alive?
She's age 77. Yes.
Well, you see, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. While some of my generation were busy trying to wreck the church, others were going into other spiritual directions. And as you see, some of us never made our way back.
Oh, man.
I can see the look of skepticism.
Okay. So.
Yeah, okay, so what?
I'm just
Would
trying
you give Jay-Z Knight your unconditional acceptance? Oh, Jay-Z Knight. Would you give her your unconditional acceptance?
No,
if she asked for it.
I wouldn't.
What if she was drunk?
If she was drunk, I would say sure, and then I would run away. I would slip away.
So basically, your acceptance would not be sincere, is what that's what you're telling me.
We're talking about unconditional and complete acceptance?
Yeah. But bear in mind, because we're talking about the lingo of my generation, it doesn't really mean much. It sounds like it means something. What does acceptance mean? I accept the Black Plague unconditionally. I know it exists. And I know if I get it and I'm not treated for it, I'll die. Okay. That's the thing. Acceptance doesn't have to mean approval.
I'd say, I'm sorry, Jay-Z, I can't answer you right now. I need to do a channel identification. I mean, when you're crazy, why can't I be crazy?
Well, no, that's a good response. Why do you think my sense of humor is the way it is? You're beginning to understand. If you can be crazy, I can be crazy too. It's that simple.
Imagine it just being in real life and me saying that. That's ridiculous. Well, but it would work. Better. I feel like she'd be confused, and that would be good because in her confusion, I could escape.
And you could tell her that confusion is the guardian of truth.
Exactly.
Which reminds me, for reasons I can't even imagine, do you remember The Far Side?
The comic strip, yeah.
Yeah. I remember one of them. You see this Far Side lady, with the beehive and the cat's eye glasses. And she's at the door, and there's this thing. And she says, "How do I know you're the real angel of death?" And there's another similar deal with the same lady, with these two children are cowering behind her. And she's at this door, and there's this big semi-Frankenstein looking thing in the door. And she says, "Yes, we have two children who won't eat their vegetables."
All right, time for questions.
So you're tired. You're tired of your little trip down New Age Lane.
Yeah, let's leave it there for now. Maybe we'll save it for the full episode. Let all the, you know, what is it? What's the term? Falderall? All the no,
No, the hoi polloi.
hoi polloi. There we go.
All right,
Yeah.
but I'll ask you one question,
Okay.
and it's prompted by an assertion someone once made to me years ago.
Okay.
They said this and said to me, "I do not believe what I'm about to tell you." So the question is, do you believe it?
Oh, okay.
Does, does New Age rhyme with sewage? And from that time on, I would ever after he said "I don't believe New Age should rhyme with sewage." And from that time on, I couldn't help myself. I thought of it whenever I would see New Age, I'd read New Age, and I think of Newage. Well, we got a
I
lot of Newage in this street.
Yeah, you're like I don't like that because you put that idea there and now I have to carry that with me for the rest of my life. So now when I read that word, I have to process it like you are. I didn't ask for that.
No one asks for Newage. It just comes. It's like enlightenment. Do you think St. Paul was, really concerned when he got smacked on the road to Damascus? How about Buddha under the Bodhi tree? How about Phyllis Diller in her agent's office? Yeah, see?
Okay, you're okay.
What?
All right.
Sublime to the ridiculous? Is that what you're going to say?
All right, questions time. Art thou ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Question from Brian, who says, when did priests in the English-speaking countries stop using the traditional English pronunciation of Latin during the Latin Mass in favor of the Italian pronunciation? I can't find much information on this. Do countries outside the Anglosphere and Italy use the Italian pronunciation? Should we return to the traditional English pronunciation?
Well, by traditional English, I mean what they call classical. I don't know that they ever used it. In fact, it's an interesting question, but I really don't know. If um, if there is still, I really have not. When I've been to the Latin Mass in England, I haven't noticed that much of a difference in the Latin, except from the general accent. If there is one, my only supposition would be that it probably began early in American Catholic history when, as a result of the French Revolution, we suddenly had a horde of French and other continental priests. And then, of course, don't forget that the Irish priests until Maynooth were the Irish priests all received their education in Italy and Spain and France. So actually, so did the English priests. The they didn't have a they did not have a seminary in England until after the French Revolution drove Douay to England. And when it did, it split up into two directions, north and south. St. Edmund's Old Hall in Hertfordshire and Ushaw in Durham. And but they would have simply kept on with whatever it was they were doing when they were in France. So I'm afraid I really don't have a proper answer for you. My apologies.
All right. Michael says, hello to both you, Charles, and Franchini. Hope y'all both are doing well. May I have your thoughts on Milton's Paradise Lost as an overall work, and then your thoughts on three characters, God the Father, Satan, and Eve. I finished reading this not too long ago, and I want to get y'all's perspective if possible. Thanks.
Well, I read it when I was in high school, so it's been a couple days ago, given that I'm class of 1978. Uh, but from what I remember, um, Milton being a Puritan, if I remember correctly, his Satan was really Cromwell. although he was a Puritan himself. And Charles I is Christ in a sense. But that's why Satan is such a sympathetic figure. Even his last line, it is better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven, is the kind of thing that would appeal to a 17th century audience. Um, Now, how much of that was conscious on his part, I don't know. But certainly, you could make the case that his God the Father is a bit tyrannical. I don't really remember Adam and Eve well enough to tell you anything about them.
Hmm. All right. Philip says, I understand that during the period of murderous repression of the church that typified the English Reformation, there sprang up hidden arrangements for celebrating the true Mass. Can you discuss these arrangements and how hidden chapels and other surreptitious loci of worship have been preserved and revealed since then? Are there any good resources for understanding better the form and functioning of secret worship?
Well, yeah, look into the life of St. Nicholas Owen, who was a prodigious constructor of priest holes. He was a lay brother of the Society of Jesus, a Jesuit, but he wasn't a priest. He was a dwarf, and so he could crawl into spaces and do all sorts of interesting things that a normally sized person would be unable to do. And he did. And even now, from time to time, they'll discover an old priest hole in a house. Some of them are that well hidden. Um, so there were several things they would do. I mean, some of these priest holes contained secret chapels within them. Another thing they would do, though, is that they would have these altars that were intricate cabinets, and when not in use, they just looked like a cabinet. And then you pull them out, open up everything, and voila, you've got an altar. So that was another way of doing it. Uh, the priest holes might be a secret chapel, or it might just be literally enough space to hide a priest in. And if that were the case, usually they'd have one of these weird fold-out altar deals. The other were mass rocks and mass caves, and these were remote places, often in Ireland and Scotland um, and parts of England, where rather than having them in a house, which either wasn't possible or whatever, they had them in a very remote place where you could put a lookout, and that lookout could inform the congregation if anybody was coming. Another one of the things that they would do in Ireland on Christmas Eve, uh, if a house was suited to have a mass for Christmas, the owner of the house would put a candle in the window as a signal that they could host a mass there. And when the British authorities wanted to know what the candles were for, they would say, "Oh, it's to light the way of the Christ child." Uh, then they'd ask, "What's the carp doing in the bathtub?" And they say, "Well, that's for the Slovaks." No, they didn't say that.
All right. So, um, talked about the priest hole, either the priest being in the hole or in the spot, or it's a chapel. So
Or a secret chapel, depending
that
on the size.
right. Well, so that begs the question: what's the definition of a chapel?
A chapel is any place with an altar that's got enough size for three or more people to squeeze in, so they can hear the mass.
So, what's the definition of an altar?
Uh, a
I
surface
mean,
upon which you offer mass.
oh, okay. So it could be okay. I was wondering if you needed like the bone, like a relic of a saint
Well, they
or
would.
some.
They would usually do that. That's what they also had, and they not just in persecution times. There was called an antipendium, which was I think it's called an antipendium. Anyway, it's a cloth with a relic of a saint in it, And I mean, I remember the chaplain at Nemi, Father Moynihan, had one of these. And before he offered the mass on the altar at the chapel, which was basically it was a Protestant thing with a table that you could say mass on. Well, before he did that, he would put this thing down and then the altar cloths and everything on top of it. Uh, and you know he had been doing that for a very long time. Um, that's how important having a relic at mass was in those days. Um, but you know, I've seen in the military, and that's why they had these portable reliquary things. It was called an antipendium. Do I know what I'm talking about? It'd be nice if I did. Um, but you know, you'd have things where priests, military chaplains, depending on when and where and all that, would say mass on the back of jeeps. Uh, no, the antipendium just goes in front of the. Yeah, it simply covers the altar. It's an altar frontal, but what is the word for it? Relic cloth. Uh, it was a antimension. That's it, not antipendium. Antimension. That's what it was called, an antimension. And the yeah, that's okay. An anti-mention. There, I feel better now.
Okay, good.
I'm
So,
not completely out of it.
so let's talk about the hiding of the priest. And that's a little that's interesting. So, did the priests wear disguises, or are they still all in cassocks
Oh
and
no, oh no,
collars?
no. They would be disguised.
Okay, I
They'd
I
be
figured
disguised
that's
as laymen.
pragmatic. So then if they're disguised, how can the people who are hunting them discern who's a priest and who's not a priest?
Well, after a while, they get rid of the reputation. You know, you always see whenever whenever Mr. Smith comes into town, because very often these priests would have circuits, and so and don't forget they'd be carrying vestments in their luggage and so forth, because they would wear vestments for mass. They might be very skimpy, but they'd be vestments. So you catch a fellow, you notice that uh, whenever Mr. So and so comes to town, the known papists gather. Well, the implication is Mr. So and so is actually a priest.
I see. Okay, so the whole thing is based on tracking the gatherings.
Yeah.
I see.
And also spies. And they had spies on the continent as well as in England. So, you know, you're arranging to hear confessions at a pub secretly. But one of the people who works at the pub is a spy for the priest catchers, or just wants a reward because there's a reward out, and he hears something that sounds like it could be papist talk, so he reports you, and then you know they grab you, they search your stuff, they find an anti-mention, they find vestments, maybe they find a small hand missile, maybe some other incriminating evidence, and voila.
I see. All right. All right. Brian says, "What do you think about Father Matthew, the Apostle of Temperance, and the Catholic temperance movement more broadly? Was drunkenness a bigger problem back then, or do we need another Apostle of Temperance?"
We could use an apostle of sexual temperance these days, but the I mean, it would have helped if Cardinal McCarrick had had one. You know, he would have. What? What?
All right, come back to us. Take a break from windy fields. Okay. Yes, that's okay. Don't. Okay. Yeah,
I wanted the studio audience to share.
that's good.
But no. Well, I mean, was drunkenness a big problem in Ireland? Yeah, sure. Uh, People spent their money on drink. Children went hungry. That kind of thing. Uh, if the only thing you've got going in your life is booze, it is a powerful, powerful thing. And you can well understand why. I mean, the temperance movement didn't pop out of nowhere. There's a reason prohibition got through.
Okay, so it's that time period,
Yeah.
1920s. Okay.
Well, there's in the 1820s. Yeah.
No, 1820s or
Remember,
1920s.
1820s, 1920s was when prohibition came in, but Father Matthew was in the early 19th century. Father Theobald Matthew, he was in Ireland. And there, in those days in Ireland, there wasn't much going on. It was not a good time. And so the temptation to just sit around and drink was very high.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like nowadays, there's the leisure is unthinkable options. Like it's everything. But back in then, it's like,
It wasn't just a question of leisure, but lack of hope.
mm,
There wasn't much money, and what money there was, you spent it on booze.
yeah,
Mutatis mutandis, there's not much money in the ghetto, but somehow the drug pushers make a ton of money out of it.
yeah, yeah. Okay. That's it for the pre-show.
That's it.
You can say some final words. You can go into whatever new age spiritual things you're into right now.
Well, it's just this. When the moon is in the seventh house and Jupiter aligns with Mars.
No new age gibberish, Charles. New age gibberish. Wikipedia, source of all truth, says it. So
New,
that it's
new
so.
age gibberish.
Yes.
I, I, all right, fine. All right, fine. You know what? You know what? You know what? Strangers are only friends you haven't met yet.
That is.
Yeah. Uh huh. Uh huh.
Who says that? Creepers? I mean, like.
Groomers.
Just groomers? Yeah, groomers, creepers, all sorts of people.
Slimy sorts. Hi. Can I sit here next to you? I'm only a friend you haven't met yet.
Okay. So stay tuned.
I think you don't really want to meet that guy, do you?
I don't want to meet that fictional guy. No, and I hope that fictional guy doesn't exist.
You look, you look like the kind of guy who, if somebody really creepy came and sat down next to you on a park bench, would just get up and walk away.
I would, without compassion, without remorse. I wouldn't care what he would think.
What if you hurt his feelings?
Well, you know what? That's a teaching moment.
For him or you?
For him, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know.
Don't be so creepy.
Don't be so creepy. And you won't get people who just walk up and go somewhere else.
What if he's creepy, but he asks for unconditional acceptance?
I would say yes, and then I would walk away. There,
Okay.
I would defuse any potential threat to my being,
Or any continued relationship.
or any continued relationship with this person.
What if the person said he wanted to get to know you, to become part of your life, to become intimately connected with you and everyone you know?
I would say I would say you're moving a little fast, buddy. You're moving a little.
I was thinking about inviting myself to dinner at your place tomorrow night. Little too fast?
Wow. Yeah, little strong, little too strong, little too fast. Okay.
In the immortal words of our favorite self-help guru, just check it in.
Just see now he. Yeah. Well, I guess that works. I guess.
How would it be if that guy, you're sitting on the park bench enjoying the day, right? And that person comes over, sits down next to you, looks at you, and says, "Hi, just checking in."
I would actually assume immediately that he is homosexual.
This is a stalker.
As in that he's interested in me.
But he's a life coach. He's your advocate. You're a cheerleader. You know his routine.
I mean, okay, so.
My suspicion is that he's a serial womanizer, actually.
Well, I know. That's my suspicion too, which is why I'm saying if he happened to do that to me, I would say, okay, I'm wrong about you. You're.
I was so wrong
I
about
was
you.
so wrong about you.
I'm sorry. You're worse than I thought you were. I'm so sorry to have misjudged you.
He's switch hitting, So.
Oh, that sounds sad. Well, have you ever thought of taking out a life coach? I mean, not him, but
No, I haven't. Have you?
Gosh, no. Mind you, I wouldn't mind being paid as one, but I wouldn't want to be one or have one.
You certainly act like a life coach a lot of times.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, do I say creepy things like just check it in?
All the time. You're constantly creeping me out.
Yeah, I am, but it's only because I enjoy it.
Well, I guess that makes it better, right? Like, because
Yeah.
it's better to be consciously creepy than unconsciously creepy.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yes. Yes. It's so much better when you're putting your creepiness on as a gag than when it comes naturally and you're not aware of it yourself. Hi. Hey, what's his name? Phil Hendry had a character who was like that, and he had this weird laugh. It was like, yeah. So I went to go see this guy, and it was really a thrill. And that somehow that laugh was the worst part of it.
Yeah.
Because it could take anything he said, no matter how innocent, and make it just, your skin crawl. Has it ever occurred to you that creepy can be expressed in many, many different ways? Not just one.
Okay, Charles. It seems like your intention is to just push me over the edge, and that's how we're going to end the show. So congratulations, you did it. We're ending the show. Stay tuned for the full episode coming right at you.
Boom. See if he makes it through the whole episode. This is a cliffhanger. That's what we call it in the trade.
See ya.